Okay, Be'ezrat Hashem, Naaseh v'Natzliach. I want to welcome you to another session of our weekly partial learning. This week's Parashat is Parashat Vayeshev. Before we get started, I'd like to give an honorable mention to, first of all, the shul that's hosting us, Sharone, also to our gracious sponsor, and also the pillar of this class has been running it for the past 5 years, Judah Mendel. All that you do. And I want to give, I want to give a special blessing for all the people that are here in the room. Everybody could have been home right now, comfortable, maybe having dinner, but everybody is here. Some people have driven for an hour to get here. Some people have come from 50th Street all the way to 41st. Oh, okay. So, in order to come and learn Torah, Ashechem v'Ashech Chelkechem, believe me, you are making Hashem happy. And Be'ezrat Hashem, you'll be pleasantly surprised with this week's Chidushim, because we are... What is this? Yes, let's do it. And this week is a very special lesson. I've been waiting to give this lesson for a very long time, but finally we got all the information, the pieces together, and even on the way here, don't let me forget, I found one last piece to the puzzle with Reuven that I gotta make sure not to forget to share it with you guys. Okay, so Parashat Vayeshev. Let's get started. We're only going to read the first two Pesukim, and it's going to start off the whole journey. We're literally going on a journey between character to character, between Gilgul to Gilgul, from reincarnation to reincarnation, in order to piece the puzzle together, where the characters that are in this week's parasha, next week's parasha, or maybe even half of the book of Bereshit, are going to take a whole different meaning to you. You're going to see them in a whole different light. Okay? Let's start. Vayeshev Yaakov be'eretz migurei aviv be'eretz Canaan. And Yaakov settled in the land of his father, in the land of Canaan. Ele toldot Yaakov, Yosef ben 17 shana, היה רואה את אחיו בצאן, והוא נער את בני בלהה ובני זלפה נשי אביו, ויבא יוסף את דיבתם רעה אל אביהם. Pasuk Bet is fully loaded. It says that these are the offsprings of Yaakov. The first person that they mention is Yosef. And at this time, he is 17 years old, and he's a shepherd. As we know, he's also one of the 7 shepherds. Who are the 7 shepherds? Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, David, Yosef, Aaron, Moshe, David. And the Ushpizit. He's one of the, you see that his job title here is Ro'eh et Echav Batzon. Vahu Nar. He's a young man, and he's hanging out with Bnei Bilha, Bnei Zilpa. Those are the Pilgashim of Yaakov Avinu, or otherwise known as the other 2 Imahot. One day we'll realize why maybe we'll do a class just on Bilha and Zilpa. And it says over here that Yosef went to his father and said Lashon Hara on his brothers, apparently, or he said something to them, and then the whole parasha starts. I wanted to zoom in on one thing. It says over here, Vehu Na'ar. If you look at Rashi, when he says that he is Na'ar, what's his Na'ar? He was a youth, he was a young man, right? That's the way you would look at it. Rashi tells us, when it says Vehu Na'ar, Shaya ose maaseh na'arot, that Yosef used to do things that girls do. Metaken besaro, he used to fix his hair. Memashmesh be'enav, he used to make his eyes pretty. Kedei sheyeh nir'a yafeh, he used to beautify himself. Interesting. Why would Yosef at the age of 17, well, you see teenagers, they like to put makeup, or even guys like to put gel in their hair. They start to figure themselves out. They start to look pretty for the market. Why? The hormones are running. Soon they need to meet people, date, get married. That's the age. But the language here bothers me, because it says over here, they used to do the actions what the girls used to do, the females used to do. Now, Why did Yosef have the desire to beautify himself?
We want to see the picture. Can you put it over there too?
So, in order to understand this,
I want to see.
in order to understand why Yosef had a desire to beautify himself, we have to understand something. Shh, please. We have to go back to Parashat Vayeshev, and over there, there's the genealogy of how Yaakov's 4 wives gave birth. Okay? So it went like this. If you pay attention, you'll start to understand. Leah gave birth to Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, and then she stopped giving birth. That was it. The next person to give birth was her maid, her shifcha, and that was Bilhah. And it was Rachel's shifcha. Rachel saw that she is barren, she's not able to give birth. She said, let me use the old trick from Sarai Imenu. Just like she gave Hagar, and then later on she became pregnant, let me do the exact same thing. So Rachel gave her Shifcha Bilhah, and Bilhah had 2 children, Dan and Naphtali. After Leah saw that, she said, me too. Let me give Yaakov my Shifcha. And then she had Gad and Asher. So now we have Leah with 4, and the Shfachot with 2 each. A total of 8. Comes the story of Reuven with the Dudaim. He comes with the special Dudaim, the special plan that allows people to get pregnant. And Rachel says, please, can I purchase these Dudaim from you? Maybe it will help me get pregnant with Yaakov. And right after that event, all of a sudden Leah gets blessed, and she gets an additional 2 children. She gets Issachar and Zevulun. So let's make a count again. Leah has 6, and the 2 maids have 2 and 2. That's a total of 10. Now Rachel says, wait. No, not Rachel, I'm saying Leah says, wait. We know that 12 tribes are supposed to come out of Yaakov. And I am right now pregnant. Leah was pregnant with her 7th child. If I am going to have a child right now, what's going to be? That means that even if my sister Rachel has a child, she'll be less than the servants. She'll have 1, they'll have 2 each, and I'll have 7. So what did she do? In Perek Lamed, Pasuk Chaf Aleph, it tells us, V'achar yalda bat v'tikra et shema Dina. Says that her 7th child turned out to be a female, turned out to be a daughter, and her name was Dina. Rashi tells us something very interesting over here as well. He says in Pasuk Chaf Aleph, Dina, why did she call her that specific name, Dina? Pirshu Rabotenu shedana Leah din be'atzma. Dina started to do some thinking. She started to do dinim, meaning she started to judge the situation. Im zachar, if it's going to be a boy, lo teherachel achoti ke'achat hashvachot, then my sister is going to be less than the servants. So hitpalela alav v'nefach lenekeva. She had a boy in her belly. You know who was in her belly? Yosef. Veitpalela alav, and she prayed, and it turned into a nekeva, which means the 7th pregnancy that Leah had was Yosef. She prayed. Yosef went to Rachel, and the womb, or the baby in the womb, turned into Dina. Now, if you go to the next pasuk, Chav Bet Chav Hei, tells us something very interesting. It says, "Vayskor Elohim et Rachel." Hashem remembered Rachel. Vayishma Elohim yiftach et rachma, and He opened up her womb. Vatah vatelet ben v'tomer asaf Elohim b'cherpati v'tikra et shmo Yosef. You see that right after Dina comes Yosef, and anytime something is very juxtaposed to one another, we know that there's a connection. There is definitely a connection between Dina and Yosef. Let's continue.
So why she got Yosef?
Huh?
Why she got Yosef? Why She got Dina, not Yosef.
She prayed that Yosef, she prayed that her child will be a female and not a male, because she wanted her sister to have at least 2 tribes, the equivalent of the other shifchot. Now,
Yeah, the sister couldn't get them babies.
but she did in the end. She got. Right, so she thought it's her sister. She loves her. She doesn't want it to be less than the shifchot. What a good sister. Not only that, at the end of the day, she gave her husband. She gave the simanim. Okay? So we see over here that Yosef is showing feminine signs. He's beautifying himself. Oseh ma'aseh na'arot, as Rashi told us. Now, something else that hints to why Yosef is acting that way is we know that it's very important for a girl to have a hey in her name. A hey in a girl's name helps them out in the future for zivugim, for priya verivya. A girl that has hey in her name, it's easier for her. Comments hey? I don't know if it's comments hey, but I know it's hey. Comments hey, maybe I said it maybe at a certain lesson warranted it. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head right now, and it's not coming. But it's hey. As long as there's a hey in the girl's name, she has a lot easier time for zivug, a lot easier time for priya verivya. We see that also that Sarai turned into Sarah, Avram turned into Avraham, and they became fertile. Also, as a matter of fact, you will tell me, Rachel doesn't have a hey in her name. Yeah, but you know what? You know what was her servant's name? Bilha. She had 2 hays. One for her and one for Rachel. Okay? So we see that this hey is something that is found in girls, right? If you go to Perek Tehillim, to the 81st chapter, on the 10th pasuk, there's a pasuk that says, Edut b'Yehosef samo, betzeto aretz Mitzrayim, safat lo adati ishma. This pasuk speaks about Yosef, but over here Yosef is not written regular Yosef, it's be'edut b'Yehosef. What's Yehosef? In the middle of his name, they shoved an hey in there. How did that happen? So it says it was that night that Yosef learned all 70 languages from the Malach. That hey was implanted in his name because I do Yosef Samo. Safat lo adati. Safat, I didn't understand the language. Safat eshma. If you ever want to learn a foreign language or a different language, just listen to it. Listen to it, eventually you pick it up. So over here we said that on that night he got that extra hey. But we know that extra hey also is to signify that he was Dina. Because he was Dina, we put the hey in Yehosef to let us know about that. Okay? Now, even though that we have now some signals of how Yosef had the Oseh Maaseh Ne'arot, we see he got that special hey, right? We saw that he was a very handsome man. His beauty was. It says that Eshet Potiphar was so crazy for him. She was so amazed by his beauty that she would change her clothes 3 times a day just to get his attention, and he wouldn't because he's a tzaddik, right? So everybody used to make fun of her. She's like, oh, you think that I'm crazy? You know what? I'm inviting all of you. She invited all her girlfriends tomorrow to a cutting etrog party. She gave everybody etrogim, and she says, start to cut etrogim, and don't worry, he's going to pass by. He's the butler. He gets busy around the house. And when they were cutting the etrogim, they're doing a little etrog party, whatever it is that girls do, he walks by, and they were so mesmerized that they started to keep cutting. They cut their fingers off. they were like, they could even feel that they were cutting their fingers. He was so beautiful. That's what the Midrash says. You couldn't withstand his beauty, but you can see that now he had a unique beauty to him. Keep that in mind. Why? Because if we have Yosef with all these qualities, we have to now review Dina. What about Dina? So if we go to Perek Lamed Dalet, Pasuk Aleph and Pasuk Bet, it says over there, Vatetze Dina bat Leah אשר ילדה ליעקב לראות בבני ישראל. You see that there's a mention of Dina in Parashat Vayeshev, that she came out of where the daughter of Dina, the daughter of Leah, came out of the tent to see the women that are in the land, because they were in Shechem. Vayarota Shechem ben Chamor achivi nesi haaretz, and this certain individual called Shechem ben Chamor, who was a nesi haaretz, he was a prince of the land. Vayikach ota, vayishkav ota, ve'anea. He kidnapped her, and he had relations with her. Now, let's start digging a little bit more on these two pesukim. Rashi says, it says on pasuk Aleph, it says, why is she called Bat Leah velo Bat Yaakov? Huh? Yatzanit. She says, you know why she's called Bat Leah not Bet Yaakov? Because she's just like her mother. Leah was Yatzanit. What's Yatzanit? When Yaakov would come home, what does it say? It says, "V'tetze Leah likrato." When Yaakov came, Yaakov, you're home, honey. You know, she goes out and greets him. Not flirtatious, she was Yatzanit. She would go out of the house. Rachel, she would wait for him at home. He would knock on the door and Rachel would open. Hi, honey, welcome home. Two different attitudes, two different approaches. Right, and we see that Sarah was the same thing. Sarah, where is Sarah? Ba'ohel. She would never come out to greet. He would come to her and see her. So it was two different things. So that, in reality, was frowned upon as a negative trait, because the Jewish girls shouldn't be ones that storm out of the house and just go out and talk to people, meet people. Even if the respect or the honor of the Jewish girl is.
No, maybe it happened one time. Listen to that.
You're not even going to believe how it happened. I'm going to read you the Midrash. But let's continue just on the Rashi. Oh, you know what? I'll read you the Midrash right now.
Tell him, asking. It happened one time.
How did it happen? It says, Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer reveals to us that she was typically a tzniut girl. She was always home. She didn't come out of the house typically. However, Shechem caught a glimpse of her, and he was mesmerized by her beauty. And because he knew that she was in that tent, what did he do? He surrounded her tent with girls singing and playing instruments. So all of a sudden she hears like, wow, what is this? Trying to pique her attention. She goes outside to see, the curiosity killed the cat, right? You hear the music, you hear the people, all this ruckus outside of your tent. And even though that she went out just for a split second just to see what it is, what happened? Hamor took her and he ended up having relations with her. Now, this is also very interesting, because it says Vayishkavota, that he went with her. Rashi says, very interesting, Kedarka, he went with her the regular way, meaning the way that a man and a woman typically have relations. Vayaneha, and he tortured her. What does it mean that he had relations with her? And then Vayaneha, Rashi tells us, Shelo Kedarka. They had relations not in the proper way. Okay? So one way was the way a man and a woman do it. The way they have the relations, right? The other way was not the proper way. Now, why is this important? Why is this important? Because Dina had a very unique look. Remember, she was first a boy. Now, because she's no longer a boy, and Leah prayed that she'll turn into a nekeva, and she did, she comes out this amazing beauty, a masculine, feminine beauty. She was so pretty, but there was something masculine to her. And that was Shechem's taste. He never in his life saw anyone that looked like this, and that's why he was so after her. Just like the people couldn't believe the beauty of Yosef, Shechem couldn't believe the beauty of Dina. And that's why he was so interested in her, and that's what it says. Vayishchava ve'aneha. Vayishchavota. That's the way regular people do it, right? The regular relations. Vayaneha. We see that was the netiyah. That was the fault of those people, and it was some sort of a lust that he had for her, and she was able. Yes, she looked. She was a woman that had masculine features, just like Yosef was masculine and had some feminine attributes, where he fixed his hair and he beautified himself. Not in a negative way. It's just realizing sometimes you look at somebody and they look a certain way. That's the way God made them. However, in this particular case, Shechem was so mesmerized by her beauty that he had to have her. And we see that because he had to have her, he actually raped her, he was with her, and he brought shame to the house of Jacob. Because he would do anything to have this unique combo in the looks of Dina. Now, there's a deeper reason, a deeper understanding of why Shechem wanted Dina. Right now, on a very basic level, we understood it's for the looks. But now, we're going to take a little bit of a journey of Gilgulim, reincarnations. It always opens up everything a little bit more. So we have two characters. We have Shechem and Dina. Shechem is the Gilgul of Terach, the father of Avraham. And Dina is the Gilgul, the reincarnation of Antalya bat Karnavo, the mother of Avraham. What are Avraham's parents doing here? What's going on? What is Terach and Antalya bat Karnavo doing with Shechem and Dina? Let's find out. First of all, oh, Antalya bat Karnavo, since you brought it up, we'll mention it. There's a segula to say it Tov times. What's Tov? 17 times. It says it's if you ever need to go to court, if you need to have a Sata Deshmaya when you're going into a meeting, or some sort of important thing that you need people to like you or to be liked or things to go in your favor, say Avraham's mother's name 17 times. Antalya bat Karnavo, Antalya bat Karnavo, Antalya bat Karnavo, Antalya bat Karnavo, Antalya bat Karnavo. 17 times, and it helps you. Okay? As a matter of fact, there's a few more pesukim that I'll share with you. That the rabbis told us that if you say that, they have a segula to have big yeshua. Okay, but that's.
You send it on the group. Sorry, because I'm not getting the.
Be'ezat Hashem, we'll see what we can share. Maybe we'll take pictures at the end of the class. Okay, now these are Avraham's parents. But before we dig into the Gilgulim and start to unravel the story, why was Avraham born to Terach? Did you ever question that? Why did Avraham have Terach as his father? Not only was he an idol worshiper, but he had Home Depot of Avodah Zarah. He was like the biggest seller of idolatry. That was his dad. Why would Avraham Avinu, the first patriarch, the Isha Chesed, or the first one to promote monotheism in the world, come from a house of idolatry? Why would that be? It's exactly that. So, this is a good concept. This is a very, very good concept. If you understand it, it'll be a lot easier for you to understand different things in life. In Shara Gilgulim, the Arizal tells us that after the sin of Adam Rishon, you have to understand, it all comes back to that original sin. So much is connected. But you should know that after the sin of Adam Rishon, כל הנשמות הקדושות נמסרו ביד הקליפות על ידי קדוש אדם ראשון. We have a group of holy neshamot that were supposed to be in the hands of, let's say, in the hands of good angels. They were, right after Chet Adam Rishon, all those high-level holy neshamot got transferred to the other side, They are in control of those neshamot. They are holding on to them, and they hold on to them dearly. And they want to make sure that they don't come into the world, because if these neshamot come into the world, they're able to bring light into the world. They bring kedusha into the world. They can bring the tikkun to the world. So obviously the other side, the dark side, doesn't want that. So imagine the holiest souls are in the hands of the klipot. Okay, now when the neshama sees, when the klipot, when the other side sees that there's all of a sudden a very, very unique neshama, meaning even though that they have thousands of neshamot, but all of a sudden they find Ruth Hamoaviyah, which they didn't want to give up, or they didn't want the soul of Mashiach, right? Or imagine the neshama of Avraham Avinu. When they have that soul, they want to make sure that it doesn't come into this world. So what do? They try to bury it in the most filthiest place that could be. So that neshama has no chance to becoming kadosh. So look what it says over here about Avraham Avinu. When he has a neshama yikara ad meod, they want to sully it completely. Why? To put her in a situation that it can never repair itself. Meaning throw it into the depths of the worst tum'ah in the world. That's where you put the holiest neshama. Imagine Avraham Avinu in the lowest place possible. Where? In the house of Terah. So what do? And since we know that this is the situation, that the holiest souls are very difficult to bring into this world, what do? They said, look, we are obligated to have these souls come down to this world. But you know who we're going to give this neshama to? To the most wickedest man in the world. The holiest soul goes to the biggest rasha. Imagine. And it says, V'zeh sod tzaddik ben rasha. It says that this is the secret how you can have a tzaddik who is the son of a wicked man. Sometimes you see there's a father, he's like completely over there. All of a sudden his child is a mamash ilui. He's a child that's completely on a star to the other side, to the highest level. Why? This is the sod of a tzaddik ben rasha. Now, this is how we have the soul of Avraham Avinu that came in Terach, right? Secondly, let's go back to Shechem and Dina. We said on a very basic level, he was just very attracted to her, he had to have her, and he had her. Fine. But now we know that they have an old score to settle. Before he was Shechem and before she was Dina, they were a married couple. They were Terach and Antalya bat Karnavo. By the way, Terach, this is a cheesy kosher joke. Terach comes home after a long day at work, and Antalya tells us, so how was work? He tells her, oh, Baruch Hashem. You get it? He sold idols. It's cheesy, but it's cute. Okay, so we have now, so now we're going to unravel. When Terach was married to Antalya, right? These are the parents of Avraham Avinu. It says that he would have a relationship with her while she was during her menstruating period. Kirota klipot tanuf kaze. That's how vile he was. He would have a relationship with his wife when they weren't supposed to.
Dina come out.
No, hold on, no.
Even though you cannot get pregnant.
No.
You think she got pregnant while she was...
There are hundreds of years before it. It didn't happen. Now,
Not Dina,
so now because it says over here that she didn't want to have relations during that time of the month. He forced her. He forced her to have relations while she was during her nida. Now, if you go to the third part, it says, because of this, because when they were husband and wife, and he had forced relations on her while she was during nida, nidgalgela bedina. Antalya had to come back in a reincarnation in Dina. Why? Because she sinned in Nida. She had to come back and be Dina. Same letters. That's a tikkun. But there's more. Nidgalgela benina bat Leah. And we know that Dina, later on also, one of her tikkunim is that she actually married Iyov. Why? Because Terach turned into Iyov. We'll get that in the end. I don't want to jump into it. But anyways, because Terach had relations with her during that she was Nidab, she too, when she went with Shem ben Hamor, we see that he also, he didn't keep that mitzvah either. Not that mitzvah, that rule. So what happens? It says when a couple has relations, or when a woman is during her menstrual cycle, if a man touches her, it says v'tihi nidato alav. What happens? The tum'ah goes on that person. So what happens when Shechem did that? What was the tikkun? When he forced Dina, what was the tikkun? V'tihi nidata alav. What happened? She was able to rectify her sin as Amtalai, and now Shechem, he got stuck, and he needs an additional tikkun. What was his additional tikkun? Shechem had to come back and be Iyov. Iyov had the sufferings. And what type of sufferings did he have? He had Metzorah. We know anybody who doesn't keep Nida, what's his punishment? He becomes Metzorah. He becomes a leper. So look, what's going on over here?
Full circle.
Full circle. They forced relations during Nida. He had to come back again and fix it. Dina fixed it. He didn't. He had to come back in Iyov. What was his punishment? The punishment of a person that goes with Nida and gets Metzorah. Incredible. Now, even though that we see that things are starting to make sense, right? Shechem and Dina are right now the reason why they have this weird relationship, why this weird thing is happening. Why? Spiritual residue from a previous life. You have to fix it. Right? So they come and they're fixing it. Baruch Hashem, they're fixing it. That's why Yaakov wasn't so angry. If you notice, what was Yaakov's reaction to this? Oh, boys, what did you do? You're going to get us in trouble. Now all the people from the neighboring cities are going to try to fight with us, or maybe there's going to be some sort of uneasiness in the area. Did he say anything about Dina? Did he say anything? Was he okay with it? I don't know if he was okay with it or not okay with it, but what we do know is for sure he knew that there was a tikkun over here. As a matter of fact, Dina had a child from this relationship. What was the name of the child? Osnat. Why was her name Osnat? Ki hayta snua. Because she was hated. Comes from the word sinah. She was hated by her family. Why? She brought shame upon the house of Jacob. Imagine, everybody's at tzaddikim. Who's she? Oh, she's the product of Dina and Shechem. Oh. They couldn't look at her. What did Yaakov do? He took a kamiyah and he wrote, "This is Osnat, the daughter of Dina, from the house of Yaakov." And he wrote a certain thing, put on her a little kamiyah, and he sent her to Mitzrayim. He said, "Go live over there." And she ended up going all the way to Egypt, and she was adopted by who? She was adopted by Potiphar. Potiphar was barren. His wife also didn't have children. So they adopted Osnat. Put that on pause, we'll come back to it. Now, in this week's parasha, we see that Yosef is being thrown into a pit by his brothers. He's sold to the Ishmaelim. He's sold as a slave to Potiphar. He's accused by Potiphar's wife. By the way, what's her name? Do you know what Potiphar's wife's name is? Miss Potiphar? No? What's her name? You know? Zulika. Her name is Zulika.
Exactly.
Right, her name is Zulika. The Midrash brings it. And like we said, He was so beautiful. She made advances in him, and at one point she just couldn't bear it, to the point she said, "I've had it. Get him out of here. I can't see him anymore." She even put a special thing on his head that he has to look at her, because if he puts his head down, the knife will go into his chin and kill him. And still, he held himself, and he was strong enough. He earned the title of Yosef Tzaddik. But the Midrash tells us, yes, Yosef was a beautiful man, very handsome, and she wanted him for his looks. He says, but there's something stronger behind it. Zulika was a stargazer. She used to look at the stars. And she saw in the stars that Yosef belonged to the house of Potiphar. She saw that he's supposed to marry somebody in the house of Potiphar. And she thought that somebody was her. And that's what she was advancing. She's like, I see him, I see me and him in the stars. The truth is, it's not her. She didn't see herself over there. The house of Potiphar had an adopted daughter. Who was she? Osnat. Imagine, the only Jew in all of Egypt is in the exact same place where Yosef is a butler. In other words, if your shidduch comes to you, whether you like it or not, it's under your nose. You could be in a town of millions of people, and Hashem sends you your beshert, as they say. Now, we know that this was revealed later on that it's Osnat as his wife, but when she was frustrated, she made a whole plot. She got him in trouble. Yosef goes to jail. He actually worked for 1 year as a butler and was very successful at it. And for 12 years he was in jail. After 12 years, after interpreting Paro's dream to come out, he became, Paro saw that this is not a regular individual. He saw that he was a genius. He saw that he had a lot of se'ata d'shmaya. Everything that he's doing is matzliach. He has wisdom way more than, higher than his age. And not only that, more than any of his advisors. And he upgrades him to the viceroy, controlling Egypt, second in command to the biggest metropolis in the world. And it says over there in Perik Mem Aleph, Pasuk Mem Hey, Vaiten lo et Osnat bat Potifera. She was given to Yosef as a wife. Let's see. Vayikra Vayeshev Yosef tzafnat pa'anav, Vaiten lo et Osnat bat Potifera kohen hu leisha. So we see over here, match made in heaven. How is this a match made in heaven? Think about it. She was kicked out of the house of Yaakov. Ki hayta snua. She was hated by her whole family. Why was Yosef kicked out of his house? Because he was sanu. His brothers couldn't stand him. Match made in heaven. Both of them were kicked out for the same reason. And Yaakov, and not only that, when it says, how did they meet? Their initial meeting was very funny. He says that Yosef was walking in the street, and again, all the women were astounded by his beauty, and they each one threw a necklace. I guess each necklace had a person's name on it, or a symbol that signified which family crest they came from or whatnot. So they would throw it at him, so he would catch it and look at them, they bring it back, and they would meet. So he would ignore it. They would just imagine you walking the street and people throwing jewels on you. It's yeah. Baruch Hashem.
I can go after him.
So imagine during this entire thing, there's only one necklace that he caught. Which one was it? The kamiyah of Osnat. He sees the kamiyah. He says, "This is strange. This doesn't look like the typical hieroglyphics of Egypt." He opens it up, and there it is. This belongs to Osnat, the daughter of Dina. Dina, that's my aunt. From the house of Yaakov, that's my father. And he realized the whole story, and they got married. Now,
We didn't see him, he said to people like that, so they didn't see him in the house.
no. I mean, I don't know. Actually, I don't know what the details are, but some way, somehow, they met up. I didn't want to forget.
You only walk 1 year in the house.
Who knows who knows how
Maybe
the
wasn't
interactions
this
were.
serious.
It was a huge house.
I didn't want to finish the lesson without mentioning Reuven. Because this ties into also. Because Osnat and Yosef had 2 children. Who are they? Ephraim and Menashe. Right? There's a hidden story behind them as well. When Rachel died, when she was given birth to Binyamin, Reuven did not want that Yaakov should now go to Rachel's servant's tent. In other words, Rachel, she was the Akeret Habayit, she was the main thing. Now that she's gone, where's Yaakov going to sleep? So he said, okay, I'll go into the Bilhah's tent. Reuven says, that's totally embarrassing to my mother. My mother's Leah. She's still alive. So he took Yaakov's bed to put it where? In Leah's tent. So it says over here, ויהי בשכון ישראל בארץ ההיא, וילך ראובן, וישכב את בלהה פלגש אביו וישמע ישראל. So it says over here, I'll read it from... that Reuven went and laid with Bilhah, his father's concubine, and Israel heard. A lot of Mefarshim say that he didn't actually sleep with Bilhah or have relations with Bilhah. It's just he confused, the Gemara says, he confused the beds. When Yaakov came home or came to the tent, it was the wrong bed in the tent. And because of that, he made a mistake. There's a beautiful chidush that I heard from Rabbi Daniel Gladstein, who brought the chidush from the Ramah. He says, and also there's the Ramah who usually has no chidushim on the Torah. It's the only chidush that the Ramah has on the Torah, and it was been brought down about 5 different times from the Chidah, and it was brought different places, but it's an incredible chidush. It says that there's a halacha. The halacha is that when somebody is having relations with his wife, and he should hear footsteps, that he has to refrain out of tzniut, that if somebody's walking by, that it should need to stop the having relations, right? So listen to this, how you read this pasuk. Vayelech Reuven walked. Reuven was walking by the tent. Vayishkav et Bilhah, and Yaakov was with Bilhah. And who is she? Pilegesh Aviv, right? Vayishma Yisrael, he heard the footsteps. He says during that time that he was with Bilhah, and during that time where Reuven was walking around, there was actually supposed to be on that night, because he stopped it from happening, it did not happen, supposed to have 2 more tribes. We were supposed to be 14 tribes. But because Reuven interrupted, these 2 tribes, Ephraim and Menashe, had to be on hold. Interestingly enough, Reuven, by the way, is mentioned over here. Vayu bnei Yaakov shnem asar. The following pasuk says, and the children of Yaakov were 12. This is to tell us that he did nothing wrong. Yaakov's children are 12. It's not 11 and Reuven is in a bad, did something wrong. The next pasuk gives us the chazakah, the Vayu bnei Yaakov shnem asar, that Reuven did not sin. The Gemara also tells us to not think that Reuven did anything wrong. We have to learn it the right way. But now, since these 2 tribes are not there, since the Ephraim and Menashe did not come into the world, we see that they come later. They come into existence through Yosef and Osnat. They got 2 boys. And who are those boys? Ephraim and Menashe. And how does Yaakov treat Ephraim and Menashe? Like his children. They became 2 tribes. You see that Levi got his position was taken out. Yosef was taken out, and who got replaced? Ephraim and Menashe. This lesson today wasn't pasuk heavy, but it just took some of the characters that we're looking at, and it's just almost like a little bit of a map of what's going on with them in this parasha, in the past, and you could see how everything ties in, everything makes sense, and you could see that Hashem is the great equalizer. He doesn't leave anybody owing anybody anything. We see that, this story helped us connect the dots. Antalya bat Karnavo. What happened with Terach and Antalya? Oh, Dina and Shechem. And then what happened? Oh, Iyov also. And then it was done. The tikkun is done. Only Arizal can open it up for us and let us see what the things are. Because otherwise, if you look at it at the face value, sometimes it's very hard to take that straightforward story. And we also see that there is a huge hashgacha pratit. There's a huge hashgacha pratit. Everything that's happening in this world is not a mistake. There are no mistakes. Even that we see what happened, this terrible thing that happened with Dina was actually the best thing for her. She did the tikkun of her of Terach and Antalya. That over there was her final tikkun, and she didn't need to come back as anybody else. After that, Dina was married to Iyov, and who was Iyov? Was Terach, who was Shechem, who became Iyov, and that was her tikkun. Her husband needed a little bit more than she did. Now, this is a lesson for us to understand that everybody needs to rectify their actions. Sometimes when something comes from out of the blue, makes no sense. It's not part of my life. It's so difficult. Who knows what our spiritual debt is from a previous life? Hashem just gives us the zchut to fix it. And if you're able to fix it, you check the box, you move on, and you don't have to come back again. Gilgulim. Not only that, when Ikvita de Mashiach, who knows if we even have the opportunity to come back again? That's why we have to accept our challenges with a smile, with simcha. Hashem doesn't make mistakes. Hashem, all He does, He gives us opportunities to fix. Why? כי אנחנו חטאנו, אנחנו עווינו, אנחנו פשענו, we ruined, we did the sins. Anything that comes recycled into our life as a challenge is just for us to fix. I always like to give this one tip that I got many, many years ago from a rabbi. If you ever want to know what your purpose in life is, if you ever want to know, what's my tikkun? Whatever is hard for you. Whatever is hard for you is your tikkun. Whatever is easy, Hashem gave it to you as a bonus, so life wouldn't be so terrible, quote unquote. But if you see that you have something hard, that spiritual antenna needs to go up and say, okay, here's my tikkun. If it had a flashing light saying on it, like flags coming out of it, tikkun, 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 you'd know. But now you have to understand Hashem did it more subtly. More like, if it's difficult, that's my tikkun. And as you go through life,
For example, what?
if it's hard for you to wake up in the morning to go minyan, that's your tikkun. If it's hard for a person to give tzedakah, that's his tikkun. If it's hard for a person not to be honest in business, that's his tikkun. If it's hard for a person to be nice to his wife, that's his tikkun. If it's hard for a person not to be angry, that's his tikkun. Everything that a person finds a challenge, that's his tikkun. You don't need a mekubal, you don't need some big rabbi to tell you. That's what it is. But we.
Sometimes you have a lot of things. You have a lot of tikkun.
That's what it is. That's your life. Own it, right? Own your life. Now.
Yeah, Sharone, she told me about the tikkun. She told me about the parsha. What did we talk about last week?
Which parsha?
That's what you mentioned, like the week and the day.
Oh, of course. It's all in it.
It's scary.
Be'ezat Hashem, that we see God's greatness revealed to us in every aspect of our life.
Mm-hmm.
Here we were privy to see somebody else's life. Abraham's parents, their Gilgulim. Yosef, what happened? Wow, great story. Now I see everything. But we have to understand it's the same thing for us. It's the same thing for us. The same thing that Hashem did for Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Yosef, Dina, Antalya, Iyov. He's doing the exact same thing for us. We have to accept the challenges and all that Hashem has for us, besimcha, and check the box and move on. Because if you don't check the box, if you don't deal with that challenge, Hashem will recycle it over and over and over again, and you constantly have to deal with it. That's why it's always good to deal with it and move on, deal with it, move on, and eventually you don't have to deal with as much, or with things that are so big, maybe just minor things. Chazdei Hashem kol hayom. Shitu li bechem nechela,
So what's this whole feast